Today we will be discussing chapter 2 in language awareness. After reading this chapter, I like to discuss two parts that stood out to me. First would be the brainstorming section. I'm pretty sure most people brainstorm before they start writing, even if they choose a method that's uncommon. People might even be brainstorming in a way they don't even realize it's or they don't think that it counts as brainstorming. I feel like people should find what technique works best for them so they have an easier time writing in the future. Using a method that is annoying or just doesn't suit someone can make them feel less inclined to write. I mean, of course, not everyone likes writing, but it can be especially dreadful for those who haven't found the best brainstorming method for them. It just seems that starting off the writing process with a strategy can be helpful. Personally, I like clustering and bullet points. Anyways, in the chapter it says try to capture everything that comes to mind, which makes sense because you might inspire a thought that can be used in your writing later on. It's definitely better to have more thoughts and points in your writing than having less. If you have many points, you can cut down and find the most important information and find the best examples to support your writing. I feel like strong points with strong examples are important to keep in mind after you finish brainstorming. If someone doesn't have enough ideas, they might put weak points into their writing, which might reflect poor quality work on their overall writing. The final part that stood out to me in this chapter was the clustering method. In my junior year of high school, I learned about clustering in my English class, and I discovered that was the best method for me. I found that clustering gave me room to put my unorganized thoughts into organized ones. My thoughts seem to jump rather quickly, which is why I like this method, because I'm able to organize my writing afterwards. I agree with this chapter when it says it does help sort your ideas. Even if I don't use every bubble when I'm clustering, I still find that the method is useful since it can help bring in more thoughts. The thoughts all somehow connect, which is something that I like. I feel this method shows me what my main points are, and it shows me what my main points are going to be for the body paragraphs. This method can look super messy and unorganized, but it really does help organize later on. Clustering is definitely not for everyone, but I like the method and I'll probably use it all throughout college.
When we write, we don't always use the same style. The way you write an academic essay is very different from how you text your friends. That's because we have two main types of writing: formal writing and informal writing. Understanding the difference between them is essential for success in college. Let's start with formal writing. This type of writing we use in academic, professional, and official settings. You'll find it in essays, research papers, cover letters, and business emails. Some characteristics of formal writing will be: uses complete sentence and proper grammar, avoids contractions, use do not instead of don't, uses precise vocabulary and avoids slang, is structured and follows a clear format, remains objective and avoids personal opinion unless required. For example, in academic essay, instead of saying, "I think climate change is a big deal," you will say, "Climate change poses a significant threat to global ecosystems as evidenced by rising temperatures and extreme weather patterns." Notice how the formal version sounds more professional and is backed by facts. Now, let's talk about informal writing. This is the way we communicate with friends, family, and sometimes even colleagues in relaxed settings. It's used in text message, social media, posts, and personal emails. Some characteristics of informal writing will be: use contractions like don't, won't, can't, includes slang, emojis, and abbreviations, has a conversational and personal tone, doesn't always follow the strict grammar rules, can be direct and sometimes fragmented. For example, instead of writing, I will not be able to attend the meeting today. In a formal and informal text, you might say, hey, can't make it to the meeting today, super busy, sorry. It's shorter, more casual, and uses conjunctions and informal phrases. So, how do you know when to use formal and informal writing? The key is understanding your audience and purpose. Use formal writing for academic essay, business emails, job application, and research paper. And use informal writing for texting friends, social media posts, and casual emails. If you are ever unsure which type to use, ask yourself, would I send this to my professor or my best friend? That should give you the answer. Understanding the difference between formal and informal writing helps you communicate effectively in any situations.
I learned also during this chapter, when it comes to writing, we'll have to be making a thesis. Thesis is basically something like the main point we're trying to put out as writers. Is something that is the general idea when it comes to the ideas and facts that we're supporting it. A thesis is not something that has to be like a big paragraph or like anything big, but it has to be, but it's basically like 1 or 2 sentences, just because it's a statement that we're trying to make. What I learned during this chapter is that it's not a good idea to make our thesis something too general or too specific, just because we don't want to give it out to the reader or the audience that are going to read our essays. For example, something that to prevent for making it more general or too specific would have to be names, examples, or statistics, facts, or illustrations, or opinions when it comes to our thesis. We should also make sure that we're not making a thesis like a question, because if we make it a question, we're obviously going to have to answer it. So it's better to, if we do make a question as a thesis, it's better to answer it in that moment too, so it could become a thesis as well. Something that is also could support our thesis that I learned would be evidence. I feel like for me personally, when it comes to gathering evidence on our thesis or something that I'm writing about, I like to go to the library, pick out specific books that have to do with my topic, or I like to go on the internet and find certified websites that talk about my topic, so I can get more informed of it, more than I already am. But when we're talking about our thesis, our evidence should be very specific, and we should always cite our resources if we're going to be using them. Something that's very important when it comes to our thesis, we have to be primary and secondary sources. Just a little bit so you guys can know, primary sources is something that has to do with like documents, letters, speeches, interviews, stuff like that. And then secondary source is something that has to do with a little bit more specific. It would have to be critics, histories, commentaries, books, articles, and stuff like that, which also helps our thesis very much. Just like I said, we also have to keep our thesis organized, keeping it a very formal outline, and making sure that we're talking about our thesis and we're organizing our thoughts as well when it comes to writing.
Draft, so it shows you in good depth and detail that the purpose of your paper is to make sure that you have an organized plan, and that when you write your first draft, it you have good details, and that you refine what you're trying to clarify in your writing plan. So in order for you to have a good first draft, or like for beginners to start writing a good draft, you need to brainstorm a little bit by writing down what type of details and information that you want to put in on your first draft, because it will help revision a good process and help you accomplish good information and good detail on your first draft when you're writing it. On page 40, it shows you to revise. As for example, it shows you to have a purpose of evidence, organization, and paragraph structure to make sure that your writing stays good and fluent and crucial set for your draft facade. And then it can help you have some objectivity and temptation to have a fresh eye and view different things in your first draft and scatter changes to help improvement and to help write a good, efficient paper. It's always important to have like a copy of your paper so that you can revise later on and fix some mistakes once your professor or like the teacher is done grading it. And then it shows you to have the writing to identify that the important steps that it's good to have the thesis statement. It's good to be positive and to be honest on your writing. That it's important that when you write a paper, you should understand that it's good to have feedback, because if you mess up, they'll always have room for improvement and changes in your writing on. And writing is one of the most important things that you should be good at due to many reasons. And you should ask questions on your paper and encourage other writers to leave notes or statements that if you messed up on a certain part of your paper, it's good for the person that's reading your paper to give feedback. So if you messed up on for example, if you messed up on grammar or something, it's good so that your professor it's good for you to help improve. Now on page 41, it shows that it is important to have or to understand the point of view and to learn what the writer is trying to explain to his paper. So for example, it is important for that to revise the process and to compare the first draft on the outline and how it actually came out. It's good to abbreviate the form, the organization, and the essential components of your essay and perhaps detect flaws in reasoning. It is also important to have large shells issues, overturn overall structures, concentrate on final reasoning. It is also important to have large shells issues, overturn overall structures, concentrate on final points. And it's good to ask yourself when and address the large elements of essays, thesis, purpose, organization, paragraphs, and evidence. And it's also good to have good topics. It is also important to have several language awareness on your paper and to particular situation that you are confronting. It's good to have good transitions in your draft, and it's good to strengthen the illustrations. And remember that reading in the text is always a useful resource that you should provide. So always make sure that you edit your mistakes like punctuation, grammar, capitalization, spelling, and have the correct format that you are writing your draft in. And it's always important to have verbal words that help define your paper, and you should use more good professional long words instead of using simple words that end and